with the game of the weekend where you had those Detroit Lions traveling down to H-Town on Sunday night, where Griff had his family in town who were coming to steal the lunch of those same Houston Texans who Griff called his second favorite team, right? And we both called this game saying that, yeah, the Lions were going to win, but if Houston had a shot, this was how Houston should have gone about it. Now, did the Lions win this game, or did the Houston Texans give a game away that they should have won because Jared Goff was handing out turnovers like it was Christmas Eve, like they were gifts? What happened to the Texans and the D'Amico Ryan-led defense that just gave a game away that they should have won?
I won't say that they gave it away, man. I would just say that Detroit made some major adjustments in the second half. This is why it's a team sport. You know, again, Jared Goff gave away 5 interceptions, but, you know, they turned the ball over a few times over there on the Texas side as well. That's what kept the game close. But at the end of the day, Detroit defense surprised the hell out of me, man. That defense was getting back, that it was putting pressure. One of the areas that I've seen with the Texans is that offensive line. And when you can get CJ Stroud off mission or off track, he has a tendency to throw some stuff. And then you got they thought Nico was going to be playing, and at the last minute, Nico didn't play, so they didn't have everybody. But that defense, the Lions defense showed up in that second half, man. Even though with the 5 turnovers.
Yeah. They did show up in the second half. They held the Houston Texans scoreless in the second half. But those turnovers, let me see how I can dress this up for my man Jared Goff. Those turnovers, albeit those 5 interceptions were more interceptions that he's thrown the entire year, but it showed that the Detroit Lions have the ability to come back. This loss for the Texans, to me, said more about their inability to close out games, regardless of whether or not your number one receiver was there or your number one running option was there. Mixon was still there. CJ Stroud still had the ability to get the ball out of his hands to a very capable tight end, a very capable number one option on that night, and Tank Dell. And you have Joe Mixon in the backfield. So for us to go and lay a goose egg in the second half, I'm going to have to own that as a head coach and say that I failed. Not that the Detroit Lions are just that much better or they are that good to where they can come back on a playoff team, because we are a playoff team if I'm the Houston Texans. And the way that I'm thinking, I failed as the head coach. I failed as the starting quarterback if I am CJ Stroud and I am the head coach. That's what I'm saying to my team and my city this week. Now, for the Detroit Lions, yes, the second half, that dual-headed monster, as you like to call them, and we were talking about it in the green room. They showed that, we are going to be a formidable opponent in the playoff for whoever decides to come to Detroit and try to knock us off of our square. That is not going to happen as long as both Gibbs and Montgomery can stay healthy and the receiving core can stay somewhat healthy. The Detroit Lions' path to the Super Bowl is through the running game. It is not through Jared Goff's arm. It is not through St. Julian as the number one receiving option or that passing game. It is through Gibbs. It is through Montgomery. It is through Dan Campbell being as aggressive as he can possibly be, both on the offensive side and on the defensive side, by being opportunistic. Right now, we know that Eric Bland's defensive philosophy, it is attack, attack, attack. And when they're not looking, attack even more. Now, that has burned them in the past. It leaves them susceptible to big plays, but those big plays did not happen for CJ Stroud and those Houston Texans on Sunday night. Now, going forward, Houston still has a 1-game lead in the AFC South, right? Granted, they're 6-4 now.
Yeah.
It seems like the Indianapolis Colts just cannot get out of their own way. We'll talk about that maybe later. But we both have, and we're going to talk about that at the very end of the show, the Detroit Lions being the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. Did the Lions give you pause for concern, or was those 5 interceptions by Jared Goff just something that, hey, it happens?
It happened. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, what I feel is that teams that want to make it to the Super Bowl need to have these type of games to be able to look back on and say, look, y'all remember when we threw 5 interceptions and we were still able to pull out of. You need these type, and you're gonna have to win these type of games to make it to the big game. I don't see Jared Goff having another 5 interception game. This is not something that you see often with Jared Goff. And I don't want to take anything away from the Titans defense. Their defense played pretty good too. And you got to think, Will Anderson didn't play, and they were still able to get to Jared Goff, man. So 2 great teams. I felt like I was watching an Alabama spring practice and I say this because of how many Alabama players, to include the head coach, was in this game. Do the numbers, and you're gonna count at least 11 Alabama players was out there playing. That day on Brian Branch and Terrion Arnold over on that side was doing their thing. You got Tua, Mechie was over there doing their thing, man. I mean, it was a good game. Jameer Gibbs, Williamson, man. I was like, man, I'm looking at an Alabama spring football game. I know you don't want to hear that, but it's okay.
I don't, and I shall not speak ill. I shall not speak ill of the Alabama Crimson Tide on this night, because you have earned my respect, at least for tonight, based on the beat down that y'all put on my Tigers over the weekend. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we move on to the next game, it took a last-second field goal for the Lions to come back and complete this win. But if you think back, just a minute before, Houston had the opportunity to take a late fourth-quarter lead, and their kicker completely whiffed on his field goal attempt. Will that come back to haunt any playoff team? The kicking. Is that going to be a difference maker for either one of these teams or any one of the major players in the playoffs? Will field goal kicking, like it did in a game we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes with the Chiefs and the Broncos, kicking be a huge difference maker?
I think more so with Houston than Detroit, because I'm just gonna be honest, Dan Count, he's a daggone the new Riverboat Run, and sometimes when he should kick, he don't really care. He have his faith in his other players anyway, and I think he said he would never put the kicker in a position that he couldn't be successful. I think that winning kick that his kicker kicked was the farthest he's ever kicked in his career. But now I think for the Titans, for the Texans, I think they really gonna have to figure out. But Fairburn, he didn't won a couple of games for them too kicking. But you know me, I'm not a big fan of kickers. If it was left up to me, we wouldn't. Them field goal kickers be sitting over there looking all clean and stuff. Jokers and been going hard in the paint, and then now the game is determined whether or not they make this field goal, man. I think the game should never come down to a field goal, me personally.
Yeah, and that is a topic that we're going to do a deep dive on here in a couple of weeks. How aggressive should you be on 4th and 3 or less, depending on where you are in the playoff race?